meeting tonight. You want to do a roll call?
Bob Denlow,
Here?
Carolyn Gatus, Ellen DeFate,
Here.
Amy Waldman,
Here.
Bridget McAndrew,
Here.
Okay.
Here.
All right, we have enough for a quorum. Let's proceed. First order of business is the minutes. Have you all looked at the minutes? Which is somewhere here. Does anybody have any additions or changes to recommend? Can we get a motion to approve the minutes for last time?
I move to approve the minutes as submitted. Second.
Okay. A vote? Ayes?
Aye.
Ayes? So approved. Next, we have we have to have a public hearing regarding Chapter 410, the Article 14 of Maryland Gateway Overlay
Excuse
District.
me, Chairman, did you want to potentially move Davis plat up?
I'm sorry.
Would you like to move the Davis plat up
Of course.
before the applicant is in the audience? If we want to move that one up from the agenda so that he does not have to wait.
Oh, okay. Let's do that one. Is, let's see, what is his name?
The applicant for
Emily?
7827 Davis,
Yeah.
come forward. Can you just
Well, here-
tap the mic for the green light?
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry.
We'll do the matter of 7827 Davis Drive, which is where we're here to see about voting on combining two existing lots. And you are whom?
The owner of 7827 Davis, Tom Guion.
Tom Keon, okay. And what I understand is, you want to give a summary?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll introduce the item. So this is a subdivision plat for lot consolidation of 7827 Davis Drive. The subject property is located on the northeast side of the corner of the intersection of Davis Drive and South Central Avenue. The property is zoned R2 Single Family Dwelling District. Recently, the city vacated rights to an area of unimproved right-of-way. This area is currently improved with the subject property's driveway. After vacation of the rights, the current property owner of 7827 Davis Drive has secured the rights to the vacated area and now requests a plat to consolidate this with his existing house. The lot consolidation would result in a new side yard setback, which would create a non-conforming condition for the existing lot or in the existing house, excuse me. The Board of Adjustment approved a variance for this setback that would allow for the consolidation of the lots without creating a non-conforming scenario. In conclusion, staff is of the opinion that the lot is consistent with other lots in the immediate area and recommends approval to the Board of Aldermen with the following condition. One, the applicant shall file a plat with the St. Louis County Recorders of Deeds Office and submit proof of recording within 30 days of Board of Aldermen approval.
So Tom, what I understand, there's almost 3,500 square feet that includes part of your driveway that is not legally yours. Is that right? Or not? You need to be consolidated. Consolidated.
The word legally got me there. It's currently not mine, except well, it's being vacated.
Okay. We're just here to do a boundary adjustment to combine the two lots into one. Is there anything you want to say about that?
It's taken me 3 years to get here, but I would like to have that done. Yes.
Okay. All right. And we do a public hearing first, or we?
This is not a public hearing, but you
Okay,
can
just a regular
entertain
thing.
public comment.
I don't have any problems with it, Tom. It's what they call in legalese a no-brainer to me. So,
Legally, I don't, yeah, it's, yes, sir.
right. Is there any comments from anyone? No? Ellen, no?
I move to approve as submitted with the stipulation added by the staff. And that is that the applicant files a plat with the St. Louis County Recorder of Deeds Office and submit proof of filing to the city within 30 days of Board of Aldermen approval.
Second. Okay. Ayes?
Aye.
Nays? So approved. Next on our list of things to do is the text amendment to Article 14, Maryland Gateway Overlay District. We have talked about that in past meetings. This is the low-rise buildings along Maryland, those nice shops. And we have tax amendments that basically remove the issue of PUDs to be used there and also reduces the height from 3 stories to 2 stories. Is this public hearing time? Is there anyone in the audience who wishes
So you're
to?
opening the public hearing.
We're opening this up for a public hearing. Is there anyone here who would like to make any comments or say anything?
I'll just provide the summary that we typically do for the staff report. So this item was discussed previously as a discussion item here at the board. The Board of Aldermen has been discussing historic preservation regulations and options. And out of that came a desire to protect the scale and development characteristics of this block of Maryland Avenue, which is located on the north side of Maryland Avenue between North Forsyth Boulevard and North Brentwood Boulevard. This area is currently located within the Maryland Gateway Overlay District. The proposed text amendment would add provisions to the existing overlay district that would restrict this block in particular from being rezoned under a planned unit development for redevelopment in the future, and would also lower the height, maximum height from 3 stories to 2 stories. In addition, it establishes a front yard setback for this block that's consistent with the existing front yard setback. And it also adds a provision to the Architecture Review Board standards that requires brick as a primary building material on the facade. Staff's recommendation is to hold the public hearing and then recommend approval of the text amendment to the Board of Aldermen.
Okay. Is there anyone who wishes to speak at the public hearing on this matter? I see no hands up, no one wanting to say anything. Any comments from commissioners here? Is no?
I'll just
Okay.
say that, the owners, I think where property owners have been here in the past. And while I respect their concerns about, taking this out of the PUD process and reducing the height, I think that is outweighed by the desire, I think, of the community to preserve this area. So I think Anna and David have done a great job of kind of coming up with a solution to, again, ensuring that we keep those shops, at least keep that area the way it looks right now.
Okay. I think it's one of the few remaining areas we can preserve the nice look of Clayton with some retail and taking away the PUDs and the height restriction, reduce it a little bit, I think preserves it for the future even more so. So with that, do we have a motion to so approve the
You
changes?
close the public hearing.
And we close the public hearing.
I move to approve the text amendment to the Article 14 of the Maryland Gateway Overlay District as submitted.
Second,
Second.
ayes,
Aye.
nays, so approved. Next on our agenda, it's technically in 3 sections, but I think we'll probably hear a lot of it at one because it's a big overlap. We have a review. This is regarding You want to explain what we have there?
Sure. So this is 48 South Beamiston Avenue, 7745 and 7751 Carondelet Avenue. This includes a request for a rezoning, a planned unit development, architectural review, site plan review, and a major subdivision plat. We recommend that we hear those together, allow the applicant to present on one, and then any motions that would be made would need to be separated back out with all those items. There are multiple that require opening of a public hearing.
So I see one being a review of rezoning application to a planned unit development to allow construction of a new mixed-use development. Review of design and materials associated with the construction of a new mixed-use development. And a review of a subdivision plat to combine 3 parcels into 1 lot for a total square footage of 38,505 square feet and widening of an existing alley.
Would you like to open the public hearing for
Yeah.
items number 2 and 3 under the public hearing item of the agenda?
Yes. 2 and 3 is dealing with a review of the rezoning application to a PUD. And 3 deals with review of the design and materials associated with the construction of a new mixed-use development. That's the actual plan unit development, new mixed use. Is there anyone here who wishes to say anything? Please state your name.
My name is Jerry Krylan. I'm Senior Vice President of Green Street Development, located at 4548 McCree.
What is your first name again?
Jerry Krylan. I represent the development company's partnership with Sterling Bank under the name of 48 or 50 Beamiston, Green Street Beamiston Ventures. It's our proposal to develop this property. And thank you for taking the time this evening.
Sorry to interrupt, Chairman. Would you like us to do our normal staff report introduction first before they get
If
in?
you're going to go into in detail, let's have the staff report.
Okay, great. So this is a request for a public hearing to solicit input regarding the rezoning, planned unit development, and site plan for a proposed mixed-use development. The rezoning, PUD, and site plan are being considered together in the staff report as the proposed development overlaps for these areas. The proposed development will also require Architecture Review Board approval as well as subdivision plat approval by the Board of Aldermen. The purpose of a PUD process is to foster appropriate use of existing buildings and enable compatible redevelopment, which provides public benefits as identified within the code. This achieves objectives also outlined in the code. The PUD must provide public benefits to the surrounding neighborhood and to the city above and beyond what can be reasonably achieved by application of the zoning provisions of the original zoning district. The subject site is located at the northeast corner of the intersection of South Beamiston Avenue and Carondelet Avenue. The properties have a zoning designation of HDC, high density commercial. The site's currently improved with office buildings ranging in height from 2 stories to 8 stories. Adjacent land uses include retail, office, hotel, and parking. The proposed project consists of the demolition of the existing buildings, widening of the existing east-west alley, and construction of a 24-story mixed-use building with office, retail, apartment, and parking uses. The proposed development includes construction of 254 apartments, approximately 13,000 square feet of office, and just over 11,000 square feet of retail, which includes a portion of the bank, and 342 parking spaces. Off-street parking is provided for the use in the attached garage. The building will total approximately 460,000 square feet, and total height as measured from existing grade to the top of the flat roof is 280 feet. Access to the parking garage is proposed off of Carondelet Avenue at the southeastern corner of the site. Pedestrian access to the retail spaces and residential entrance is located along South Beamiston Avenue. The main entrance to the bank service will be provided at the southwestern corner directly adjacent to the intersection. City standard streetscape is proposed along the project limits. A pocket park is proposed along the east side of the building. The loading dock and service areas are located on the north side of the building with access from the alley. The subject properties and proposed development meet the minimum requirements for mixed-use PUD in terms of the uses component and the size of the project. Staff's of the opinion that the development contains a reasonable ratio of commercial to residential uses. The project is seeking relief from certain development standards that are set forth in the HDC zoning district. A PUD must provide public benefits to surrounding neighborhood, as mentioned, above and beyond what can be reasonably achieved by the zoning provisions. The Board of Aldermen may approve alternatives to zoning regulations, subdivision regulations, or design standards applicable to the property when rezoning to a PUD in exchange for these public benefits. The number of requested modifications to development standards drives the number of public benefits that a developer is required to provide in terms of the point scale set forth in section 405.1380 of the zoning regulations. All PUDs provide at least one public benefit or combination of public benefits that total at least 10 points. In addition to that 10-point minimum, the additional points are required for any code alternative. Each code alternative requested must be provided with a total of 5 public benefit points. In the staff report, there are 2 tables. Table 1 outlines the points, the code alternatives being requested, which establishes a minimum of 30 points for the proposed development. Table 2 includes an analysis of the proposed public benefits as outlined by the developer. Staff has provided an analysis in terms of the points we recommend awarding for each section. We can go into those in more detail, but I will not spend time at this moment summarizing all of them. Instead, I'll move to the criteria for approval section of the code. The site is The site is located in the Central Station District as identified in the Downtown Master Plan. The vision of this district is to create a walkable, high-density mixed-use district with significant new office development and high-density multifamily rental residential infill oriented around the Clayton Metrolink Transit Station. The proposed development does include office and high-density residential, and staff is of the opinion the proposed development is consistent with the Downtown Master Plan. The existing landscape areas and trees on the site will be removed to accommodate the proposed structure. The entrance to the bank at the southwest corner of the building is recessed to provide a larger landing area under an overhang. This design feature is similar to the existing plaza located at the corner. However, it will be more open to the public without the raised planter beds. The use of the planting areas along the public sidewalk will bring a natural element to the public realm and enhance the pedestrian experience along South Beamiston. The development will also include new street trees as part of the city standard streetscape. The applicant is proposing a pocket park along the eastern property line. The area will feature permeable pavers with seating areas, planting areas, an art piece, and a dog run. The pocket park will be open to the public and will provide an activated area between 2 garage structures. The plantings will include a mixture of ground cover, evergreens, and shrubs to replace the raised planter beds currently located throughout the site. This will also create a unique opportunity for public art. Outdoor amenity space is proposed for both the office and residential uses. A covered deck is located at the southeast corner of the tower on the 2nd floor. This area will be accessible from the office space. The residential amenity deck is located on top of the garage structure or level 4 of the tower. This space includes a pool, grill station, and open seating area for the residential use. The proposed parking garage will have 342 parking spaces. The first level of the garage will provide open public access. However, 23 of the 29 spaces on this level will be reserved for use by bank employees during bank hours. Outside of the bank hours, the first level of parking will be open and available for the general public. The upper floors of the garage with 313 spaces will be restricted to bank and employee and resident access only. The proposed parking garage is located on the eastern portion of the site. The tower provides screening and active uses along South Beamiston Avenue. However, the garage is located on Carondelet Avenue without a buffer or a screen. The proposed lot orientation results in 2 adjacent parking structures facing the north side of Carondelet Avenue. Parking garages do not contribute to a friendly and welcoming pedestrian environment that is desired in the downtown area. However, they also provide a necessary service to support the diversity of uses. The introduction of the pocket park will help with the potential activation of this area. However, the park is recessed between 2 tall structures and will have limited impact on the sidewalk unless you are directly adjacent to the entrance. The design locates all of the back of house services along the alley, which will limit the direct interaction of large trucks and pedestrians. To create an efficient and safe garage design, the applicant has stated that it must extend to the garage to the property line along Carondelet Avenue. This design is not ideal for the reasons outlined above. However, there are ways to still buffer the use and activate the street wall. The applicant is proposing to skin the garage with a glazing system similar to the tower. The use of varying opacity and frit patterns of the glass are intended to make the solid blank wall more appealing. Staff agrees that this direction of design and architectural element can mitigate some of the impacts of a garage along Carondelet Avenue. However, staff feels that some enhancement are still required. More detailed analysis is contained in the architectural staff report. In conclusion, the project will provide a desired mixed-use development at a prominent corner in downtown. The development aligns with the vision of the downtown master plan and includes a variety of uses that will help generate visitors and pedestrian traffic throughout the day. However, the development has not met the minimum point requirements to be eligible for a PUD. Staff therefore recommends to hear the presentation from the applicant and public comments and recommends that the request for a PUD rezoning, architectural review and plat and site plan review are continued to allow the applicant to address remaining comments.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. City Manager Gibson. We appreciate the opportunity to share tonight and talk about this mixed-use development and the request for the PUD. We also receiving your comments from the committee. We're here to answer any questions that you have. We seek a recommendation ultimately from the committee to the city council for approval of the request to develop this project. And we anticipate that assuming that can take place here and through the process, we would break ground on this project in the fall, early part of the fall. So before we get started, I want to thank the City of Clayton Planning and Zoning, Anna and her staff for their guidance and insights as we've pulled this together in our application over the last several months. There've been a lot of meetings and correspondence back and forth, been very helpful. From this interaction, we understand that the purpose of the architectural process, review process, is to assure that all the projects at Kiwanis and Clayton here have conformity to the high quality standards and architectural integrity of the prescribed ordinances. We intend to follow that with our project here all the way through. I'll take just a second and make a comment. This, for many of the people on our team, we've been involved in other projects here in town already, so this is not something that new. The first time we brought this to the table, we've gathered everybody here. We brought a really solid team from the architecture side, the developer side. Our partner is Sterling Bank, who currently occupies a portion of the site. And it's not lost on us that the beautiful skyline that Clayton has right now is a result of the input that we get from this forum here, from this architectural review. To that end, we've deliberately designed this high-rise apartment mixed-use building to be highly attractive, a modern structure, inviting not only from the skyline, an added benefit to an already beautiful skyline, but equally impressive at street level too. And we'll get into that a little bit. This is going to be evidenced by the materials that we've used, which are intended to complement the character of the surrounding properties, and a really intentional focus on our part to pay attention to the experiential impact of this project on the city, on the business community, on the central business district itself, to the general public, to visitors to Clayton, as well as to the residents in the building. We've created, I think, and you'll hear about that from some of the folks that were joining me here, but we've created a really inviting pedestrian experience in this pocket park that Ms. Cron's mentioned. We paid attention to walkability, to sustainability features, all part of the ordinances, and to the streetscape. Our feasibility, a couple other points unrelated necessarily, not for discussion on the architectural side of things tonight, but our feasibility research indicates we're going to bring 350 some new residents to the city when the project is completed. And the demographic impact of this is that on average, this will be, each of those folks will have average annual income of about $100,000 a year. That translates into a buying power of $10 to $12 million being brought to the city. And responding to that, we also have incorporated, as was mentioned, about 11,000 square feet of retail space. Some of it is replacement of what's existing there in the form of the bank lobby for Sterling Bank, and then additional retail space as well. With that, you know, I'm going to introduce for just a second the members of the team that have put this together, and then ask our lead architect, Tom Young, to talk for just a minute about some of the features of this, and then we'll step aside and take all your questions. Okay. So tonight with me, principals from Green Street, Phil House, the applicant, and Kevin Morrell. Tom Young, I mentioned a minute ago, is with Green Street as well. He's our lead architect. Josh Goodman is with HDA, a wholly owned subsidiary architecture firm of Green Street. We're a vertically integrated company. And Lee Hess as well. Lee is with Loomis Landscape Architects, and he'll talk a lot about the pocket park that Ms. Kranz mentioned. Rain, I'm sorry, Anna. Keep saying that. Anyway, with that, Tom, you want to take a few minutes?
Oh, okay. You all see my screen? Okay. As Jerry mentioned, my name is Tom Young. I'm an architect with Green Street and HDA. So I was just going to run through some of our concepting and how we arrived at the design that you've had the privilege of reviewing the past couple of weeks. So Jerry had introed with a couple of slides of just the context, and we can flip back and forth casually as we go through the presentation, but just the Clayton skyline, several views to reference towers that have been built or under construction. The site big picture, bird's eye view from the southwest. So we've indicated the site dashed here in yellow at the northeastern corner of Carondelet and Beaviston. It's the existing Sterling Bank space in that corner plaza. Zoomed in shot for context. So recently, I know Centene reclad this tower project and have painted the existing precast parking structure. So we would be demolishing this collection of structures just to the west of that. The alley on the north end, where all the services will be accessed off of on the northeast corner of our building. This is just some existing context photos that we can reference and come back to as we work through the design. But a view from the southwest of the existing Sterling Bank building. This is a view of the alley and Louis to the north. So the existing condition of Sterling, which is a access point, mostly masonry, pretty solid wall. And then as you step down, grade drops pretty quickly from the intersection of Beaviston and Carondelet as you move east down towards that Centene garage, repaint, and Centene office building recladding just to the east. So our property line occurs approximately just right behind these bushes. There's existing on this corner, there are 3 curb cuts to access 3 garage access points. So one here at the northwestern portion of the site, and then 2 down along Carondelet. So one here and one over here. It's kind of, this is a photo that is all kind of semi-combined. So this is what we're proposing. So this is viewing from the southwest corner, Carondelet on the right side of your page, Beamiston on the left side. And I'll go through some of the massing concepts and sample diagrams of how we kind of came to the structural you'll review tonight. So in the lower right-hand portion, just big picture diagram is the program massing. So we chose to locate the parking structure adjacent to it, an existing parking structure. We placed the access point at the low end of the site, so we didn't have it on the prominent Beamiston Avenue or at the high end of the site, so it naturally got tucked down at that southeastern corner because grade drops approximately 12 feet from that corner, the existing Sterling corner down to the east end of the site, so naturally that made sense. It also steps down the scale of the building as you move to the east. We've identified this yellow program bar at the corner and on the west end along Beamiston, and we said commercial use at the accessible topo. Like I mentioned before, Carondelet drops pretty quickly as you move to the east. So we identified a good zone for the commercial space and retail to occur. The commercial space I'm referencing the second floor is Sterling Bank's corporate headquarters. But at the southwestern corner, there would be their retail space, retail location, and then we'd have another residential entry point location, and then a small cafe that would be accessible off the western facade. So facade massing. So once we located the garage and we placed the residential bar, it made sense contextually to step down the scale as you move to the east down Carondelet to relate to the existing structure scale. And then to place at this prominent corner a vertical marker that became that residential tower. You can kind of see a dashed frame here that indicates where we've highlighted that second floor commercial space that will be Sterling Bank's headquarters to create an architectural identifier and relate to the context of the north, Louis and adjacent structures. The tower itself will be clad in glass, and we opened the corners. We featured a residential balcony at all four corners, creating really, rather than just a large glass block, really 4 glass planes. So we created a gasketed condition at each corner to make the structure appear more delicate, and also just to break up the monotony of the facades. Another thing that helps us decide this basic program mass in the lower right-hand corner is the solar orientation for what would become the residential exterior amenity deck. So south in the lower right-hand corner. So as the sun works its way across the sky through the day, especially summer hours, most of our sun is received at that pool deck throughout the day, and then it's blocked the late evening stronger rays. The low rays of the sun would be blocked by the tower. The only other options we could have configured was to put the tower further to the east, but again, contextually didn't make sense. Like these were the correct urban massing moves that we adhered to, and also some of the feedback we received at the first concept architecture review over a year ago. So a lot of these adjustments were based on that first round of feedback we received from you all. Facade break. So again, the glass tower will reflect the surrounding context. It will reflect the skylight, sky color. But we then decided, rather than have projected balconies or no balconies at all, which most of these apartments do have, that you see going up around the country, we actually recessed our balconies throughout the facade to create strong break lines within, so shadow, recess, reflection. And like I said, that helps break up what is the west facade along Beamiston. Facade systems. So we created a layer effect on the upper tower by using an extruded aluminum cap at the slab edge. So it's got more of an appearance than like a concrete slab edge. So approximately 10 to 12 inches of extruded aluminum. And then the secondary system would be SSG verticals which is basically a structurally glazed glass system. So it kind of goes to the backdrop. So rather than having like an aluminum cap or something that would conflict with the aluminum floor slab horizontals, that was our thought. We used a punched opening and detailed masonry solution on the west end along Beamiston. Again, just to create an interesting experience for the pedestrian. We have a series of punched openings and then some white masonry with some recessed bricks to create some detailing and some interesting lighting that will create a textured effect. On the garage, so that it didn't appear to just be a garage with a precast, spandrel panels or verticals. We clad it in a similar system. We didn't want it to look just like the tower. We kind of wanted it to look like another building that was of the same family. So we created a glass facade with AB patterning created by a frit pattern and a similar glazing to the tower. So again, of the same family, but a unique appeal. To us is timeless and also relates to the adjacent precast Centene garage that was recently repainted. So it's not as repetitive. Like I said, we're using AB patterning where theirs is just more of a regular patterning system. But again, we're relating somewhat to the adjacent structure. And the final diagram was really about the pedestrian experience. So there's kind of a blow up of this diagram to say if we worked from the northwestern corner along Beamiston, we recessed that first floor that I spoke about previously that was that masonry and punched opening solution. Again, so it just wasn't all glass. It added like a layer of texture and permanence with the masonry. We pulled that in approximately 30 to 36 inches and provided a planter to improve the pedestrian experience. We created a recessed primary entry for Sterling's Retail Bank. They're our partner on this project, so we wanted it to be important location at the transition from Beamiston to Carondelet. We then created 2 secondary entries, one for the residential tower. Most of the residents will be coming in through the garage and then going through the elevator up to their units. But we created 2 secondary recessed entry points, one for the residential entry lobby and 2 for the secondary retailer that could be a cafe. I believe it's approximately 1,800 square feet of retail space. And I mentioned this before where then we highlighted and tried to break down the scale and relate to Louis just to the north across the alley by providing an architectural frame around Sterling Bank's second floor headquarters space. And then I think this was mentioned in the report, at the southeastern portion, we have a recessed volume. So as you look up from the pedestrian experience, walking down along Bemis or along Carondelet, there'll be a soffit, and you'll see that in some of these materials, but a recess. So there's a lot of activity really going on as you work your way down Carondelet. An open corner, a framed commercial space at the second floor, Sterling's retail location at the first floor. As you work your way down approximately 10 feet to the southeastern corner, we've decided to pull the glass from the garage down to grade. We don't have a retail location at the point, but we are pulling down glass that will provide reflection texture over some solid material. And then at this corner, there's the break. Again, we're removing 3 curb cuts and providing one at the low end of the site. And then this pocket park that we'll review here in a minute that is a space between the existing Centene garage. And we had to offset our building 14 foot off of our property line due to an existing easement. So there's approximately 25 feet of space that will be nicely landscaped with some seating areas and potentially public art. So this is just a bird's eye view of the tower with that amenity deck, like I said, located on this southern portion of the parking structure. So we've done our job and as far as like cladding this and hopefully making it go away as a parking structure. But again, it made sense on this portion of the site adjacent to an existing repetitive precast structure. This would be that pocket park location. And I think from there, Lee, I don't know if you want to. So Lee's our landscape architect. He's just going to talk about the pocket park quickly, and then we'll have some questions and we can kind of go back and forth. So thanks for your time. So Lee, I have this slide on this side, so however you want to talk.
Yeah, my name's Lee Hess. I'm with Loomis Associates Landscape Architects. So I'm here to walk you through the design of this pocket park. As Tom said, the existing building, you can see my cursor is roughly about the edge of where we have the park shown here in the middle of the alley. So currently between the proposed garage space and property line is roughly 14 to 15 feet. And the length of the park to from the existing sidewalk to the alley is about 190 feet, I believe. And just, whoa. Sorry. Got it. right.
That's,
All right, that's good. So we're looking rotated now. North is to the right. As we work our way from south to north or from left to right into the space, we're proposing a surfacing of permeable concrete pavers that are patterned as such to imply movement through the space. Fiberglass planters will flank each side of the park with tree plantings and ornamental plantings in those. We have to do planters with trees because there is a 10-foot wide easement, MSD easement, that we cannot plant trees in. So those trees have to be elevated above and movable. The yellow dots shown along the dashed zigzag line are what are called catenary lights. If you know what cafe lights are, that you often see it actually they're shown there at the top there in that example picture, something similar to that. So that'll be a cable that zigzags back and forth, and then lights positioned on those cables along the implied path there in the middle. Furniture wise, we're proposing occasional benches and bistro tables and chairs, lightweight tables and chairs. So the benches would be fastened to the pavers, so they would be permanent. Or I say permanent, they would be removable, but they would not be, you'd have to, use a tool to remove them. The bistro, the furniture would be movable. That would not be permanent furniture. As Tom mentioned before, this is a good opportunity to incorporate some artwork into the space. We don't know yet what the scale or the design of that feature is. We still need to talk to some artists and figure out materials and that sort of thing, and scale. As we move farther to the right and to the north, we come up to the dog run, which is a fenced dog run that abuts the garage. So it's about 8.5 feet wide by 50 to 55 feet long within the fenced area. That'll be a 6-foot high fence with what are called puppy panels, which are a tighter picket for smaller dogs and that sort of thing. It will be artificial turf. It'll be a turf that is specially created for dogs. So it's on a clean aggregate base. It's drainable. The walk continues along the east side of that dog park. It's about 5 foot wide, and that takes you north to the alley out of the park. And I'll mention that we've been in talks with Centene about possibly expanding this park to incorporate the entire width of the alley. They simply just need to see some more details on the park and before we can make any commitments on that. Any questions?
If I may,
Yes, sir.
just to make sure I understand where this is between the two garages.
That's
Is that
correct.
right?
That's
And
correct.
it's only going to be 14 feet wide, which isn't very wide, but it seems like you have a
It doesn't-
quite attractive.
It doesn't sound wide. It doesn't, but it does. You can fit a lot of, activity in that amount of.
I'm trying to
width.
picture two dogs in a space of 8 feet wide. That'd be pretty tough. If I walk down that walkway, if I look on your new garage, am I looking at cars that are,
No, it's a solid.
that's a solid?
Yes, sir.
And what is it covered with? It's just so we know now.
So currently, again, Tom Young with Green Street HDA. So on the east portion of the garage, the first level and a half are clad in, right now it's CMU block, but up above that, it is open. There's a
When you say
breathe.
up above, when I start the second floor,
Let me go back to this image. So along this face through here, and I could pull up some of the drawings that we submitted as far as our architectural submitted. but you can see up above, there's an openness requirement, so garages can breathe because of the exhaust fumes. So up above the second floor, approximately first floor, 1.5 levels because of how ramping works, would be, you know, a CMU block wall. And we talked about maybe having a mural on that or some other material. So it's still being developed. And as Lee mentioned, I mean, you can see where this is highlighted as off-site. That's our property line along where these pavers exist. We had to relocate. The existing building is built over that easement, but we couldn't build a new building over it. So we have 14 feet, and then we're in talks with Centene to say, hey, would you be okay with us maybe having additional plantings and other vegetation so that it is truly from wall to wall 25 foot approximately. So when he says 14 foot, can be deceiving. Yeah. And I do have a PDF I could pull up and zoom in. It's kind of hard in
I mean,
PowerPoint.
from my perspective, I think what you've done to landscape that 14-foot width is quite admirable. You know, it's very attractive. I'm just trying to imagine the experience. If I walk down there on Centene's garage, I assume that's open, right?
There are precast panels. It's partially open, same kind of
Like the
rationale.
first story and a half is solid, and after that, it's all open, right?
Correct. I think I might be able to see that in one of these zoomed in shots. Or maybe not.
Can you just speak into the microphone so that the recording picks you up? Thanks.
And to give some sense of scale and to how wide that is, walking 2 dogs down, it's about the distance between this desk here. It's about 25 feet or so. That includes the going up to the edge of the Centene garage. So 14 of it is, you know, the setback from our garage, and then another 10 feet is the setback from the Centene garage. So it's about that sort of distance. To your point about the elevation, up to the second level, we will enclose the wall on our property and use that as an opportunity for a mural or art or a green landscape wall feature, sort of like this one showing here. So it is actually a pretty wide area, and it runs 186 feet back to the alleyway, right? The example that's up here is a couple different places. There's one in Philadelphia that are roughly the same diameter or same width. Okay, we tried to give some scale to it to give, if that was helpful to you. And then the next one down is a location in an alleyway like this that's in Denver on what's known as the Dairy Block in downtown Central Business District of Denver too. And this actually is less than 25 feet wide in here, but it all comes down to the activation of it and how, you know, how from a property management standpoint, as we build the space out, we make things happen there, right? And I think with Sterling Bank's, you know, corporate citizen mindset, ours, of course, and Centene, it'll be a very active place. So.
I mean, like I say, it's admirable what you do, but when you look at that Denver, there are entrances. You actually go into places there.
There are some.
Where you are talking about, it's like 2 walls of garages. You're going through, and there's no light that's ever going to be there. I'm saying it's not going to be perfect, but you have to work with what you got.
Yeah, I think we took
according
the
to your plan.
approach of this is historically, you know, underutilized space or overlooked areas of setback in commercial developments that are usually just left to being areas that collect, you know, fences or you know, people park things in there. We don't want to do that. We want to make it. We want to appeal to the city's walkability, you know, and create some park-like fashion too. So,
And if I move to the garage
Yeah.
On the front on Carondelet, there, it's entirely a garage, right? It's not like Centene's garage buildings where it's first floor retail. Is that right?
that's right. Our
And-
retail is on Beams.
Right. So as I walk down, you know, I went by Sterling's buildings, I'll call them, right, before I came here, and they're actually quite attractive to me anyway. You know, it's nice, it's pedestrian scale, and I get all that. But in your garage, you put a new skin on it, right?
Correct. It's clad in a glazing system similar to the actual tower, but we added some frit and some AB patterning to make it kind of its own distinctive architecture. And we pulled glass, not all the way down to grade, but we thought it was more interesting to kind of hold it up a couple of feet and continue some of the masonry down below it. Some other-
Looked at other iterations. Go ahead and go through those.
So you have two garages adjoining one another, one owned by Centene, one proposed by you guys. And there's no way to make that too pedestrian friendly. I mean, it's just going to be, I know you're trying to cover it up, I guess, but it's just kind of like a pedestrian desert there for a while on Carondelet. Whereas right now, we don't have that. And I just point that out because I'm trying to understand your project.
I would say, like, if you look at what's there currently, it is a lot of solid. It's a lot of parking garage entries. Right?
Right.
So, and if you look, this is over, I mean, other than Sterling, they have the corner open space and the retail bank, but there's a lot of solid there too, especially on the alley side with garage access. So basically our whole facade along Beamerson is glass lined retail, an open corner, recessed corner with retail. Reality is a lot of these buildings, you just can't line them with retail. You just can't. And that's where what we did on the southern facade as a gesture was took one, clad it in glass and not precast panels like the adjacent garage has. So something that will reflect surrounding context, the sky, and then we added some fritting and detailing to make it more interesting. So that was the intent. But as we looked at the existing building, there's a lot of solid there, just solid masonry. So we thought with just garage openings, we thought, well, glass, pulling it down to grade would be a better look at that side. And then if we could introduce, like I said, the existing building is built on the property line. We can't rebuild at that edge, so we have another 15 foot. So between that and the space between Centene's garage and their property line, which is 11 feet, so approximately 25 feet, we thought we could make something interesting. And hopefully, with Centene's help, like they will allow us to put more greenery and more space or more softness in that alley. At this point, they're intrigued and they're interested to work with us. We're just introducing it as a concept to see.
Right.
If it's
I mean,
worth it.
Tom, when I look at your project initially, I like the fact that you have so many people that will be living in Clayton to come out. And at the end of the day, the whole idea of Clayton is to make it a mixed use where people can live and work and play there. At the same time, for that to happen, when people walk by your building, I want it to be pedestrian friendly. That's why we have concepts like, not your project, but other projects, the second floor is stepped back to make it more pedestrian scale. So you feel you're not going along a wall. And then I look at your project, it's another glass.
I just want to flip to that garage screen again. So here's what's the existing condition at this corner. So these two buildings and two access points to the garage and the masonry. And here's what we're proposing. So one access point at the low end of the site, some glass fritting. And the second layer or third layer of glass would actually have diffused gray material on it. So you wouldn't be seeing cars. From the garage side, you would be seeing basically glowing panels, but from the pedestrian side, you wouldn't be seeing cars because it's diffused glass. And like I said, we pulled glass down to street. So at least you're walking along Carondelet, there's reflection and texture more so than, right now there are some planters out there.
Can you go back to the previous picture? So as I walk up the street there, I go past the garage. Does the building recess in at that point?
Not on this face, no. Well, up above. So on the second story, this is Sterling's corporate headquarters. They wanted like a terrace space. So when they host events or get-togethers, they could, spill out on that from their. We're still working through the planning.
Right,
on the second floor.
ignoring that punched-in space, which is nice,
Yeah. I think there was
Is it just a vertical wall I'm basically walking by?
Potentially, yes. So this is from the high end of the site. So this is that recessed Sterling entry. Here's the frame we talked about that frames their second store corporate headquarters. And then you can see we have So there is some masonry here, but we've added some detail and offset bricks and added some texture, so it's not just a solid wall. And then as you work your way down, you can kind of see this is that garage line where we pulled glass down. So as you walk along Cronolette, there's retail about halfway down, right? So this is all their retail bank location. And then up above on the second floor is their corporate headquarters. And then you work your way down to the garage. So even compared to what's now there, I think it's certainly a softer experience, potentially. So less curb cuts, less garage doors, less driveways, and so on.
Well, the fact that you have fewer driveways is always good.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no issue on that one. And as a glass building, Clayton has so many of them. You know, I think we cornered the market in St. Louis sometimes, I think, on glass.
This is a
buildings.
detailed shot. So I had mentioned earlier along Beamiston where we provided another texture with these masonry pilasters, punched openings, and we had some texture with some lights that'll wash that in the night, in the evening hours. So you have some shadow and some nice detail. We talked about this recessed planter. You know, for now we're showing these little objects. There was potential for that public art component either to occur at the alley side, or if we did these like intermittent pieces along that western facade, that was another option. I know when we went through some of this application project on some other developments that we had talked about that, like we would work with a commissioned artist that worked with Clayton to get something you were all on board with. So that was one thought as a concept.
I mean, all these changes to all these additions, like to give texture and
Yeah.
and maybe you set back a foot here or there and you try to break the line a little bit. I mean, to me, and you know, it's always easy. Well, to me, those are all minor accumulations to what's basically a large rectangular glass building. Again, we're adding the Clayton with a flat top. And I
I will say, like, again, I'm going to hop right back to
Go
this
ahead.
other context image to say, here's what we're putting in here. And here's what's there now. So a garage entry and a big brick wall. There is, I mean, obviously Sterling has their retail entry at their corner as you move further south. But again, our whole facade along Beamiston will be glass and retail and not brick and garage entries. So the fact that you're taking down older buildings, I can understand that, but that doesn't mean that glass building is automatically going to be better having how many stories? 25.
25 stories. You know, Clayton is something I would like to see as desirable to walk around. I just don't want to pass one. I'm not saying your building is boring right here, but just there's so many boring buildings in Clayton with glass and just vertical lines and I go to other cities all over the country and all over the world and I see interesting looks and, you know, it could make you feel good walking with a friend as you go to lunch or somewhere. And if all I'm doing is just walking past walls under the guise of nice looking glass and people living in them or people working in them, I really take a hard look. That's what I'm trying to say. I really take a hard look. Is there something we could do a little different to add a little flavor, to make it more pedestrian friendly? And I'm not the architect. It's kind of like I know when I see it, and I just have a hard time seeing it here. But you always have the last word.
Obviously everyone's got their own personal opinion and aesthetic. And I think the other thing we work with are rents that you can get in this market and budgets for construction. And I think we first visited you all like 18 months ago. So we have been adjusting this design based on feedback we got, but also constructability and what this market can pull off. And we think we've pulled together a really great version of that for tonight.
Well, listen, I think you guys do great work. And when you bring Green Street's name in here, I always say, oh, wow, I'm really in for a great show, you know, because they do great work. And I'm I'm looking at this and what I see is another, I feel like I'm looking at all the glass buildings in Clayton. And that's not necessarily a compliment. I mean, you know, it's Phil, you want to say something or?
I think a couple of things. I'm Phil Holtz. What we're doing is bringing people here, which creates dynamics that you don't have. And, you know, I've done a lot of work in the city, which you're probably aware of. And one of the biggest challenges is in a city like Clayton, where you have a population before COVID that was probably 47,000 people. Most of them left. You ended up with something around 17,000. I think that was the number. So what we're trying to bring is street activity, balconies, and character to the neighborhood that's not there now. Because when you walk by, in fact, I parked down there this evening, it feels like a very cold structure because it is. It's tired, it's worn out. And Sterling knows that too. They need a different perspective. They want to be here as a corporate citizen. So integrating their retail bank, their corporate office with a balcony, to creating the streetscape that has some texture to it that's soft in terms of the plantings, the trees, how we're changing that. People going in and out of this building, you know, by the hundreds, changes what's there today. And for me, you know, what's missing here in Clayton is the engaged people piece of it. And it's not just one building. We're looking at several other buildings here that bring hotels and activities, rooftops, things like that, that change where people go. So when a young person travels through Clayton, he typically moves on to the Mon area, Central West End, or to the Grove because there's street life there. And it's because of the people that you bring to that destination.
Phil, I agree 100% with what you just said. So tell me how having this 25-story building where it comes up, right?
Well, there's economics.
It's like a dam wall we have there. Tell me how that engages
Well, you have
the
a
people
site
on the
that is
streets.
very expensive to develop. In fact, when we did our budget, the first time we were, I think, 20 million bucks out of whack, close to 18, $20 million. So there's some physical demands that you put on a site to make it work. And you have to have enough density and you have to have enough scale to underwrite what a site like this is probably close to $13 million. So it's basic math. At the same time, you want to create something that has character and texture and also some dimension to it that defines the architecture. And, you know, we haven't shown you the video, but there's a video that walks you down around this building that feels a lot better. And the Pocket Park is really instrumental in kind of being creative about how do you do something in an urban setting that provides something unique and different. And you see this when I travel around the country, when you go to Denver and a lot of other tight urban settings, these pocket parks that you create off of the alleyways are really, truly unique and different. And I know with Sterling Bank, they have a lot of events. We could do events there with the apartment people as well. You know, it's the dog park activates. And I know when we've done all of our apartment developments in the city, having that dog park, which seems incidental, is a great way for people to interact and connect with each other. And I think this is just one of many projects that you'll see us do in Clayton, but we're bringing people here to activate the city, to spend money. I know in the sales tax realm, that's depressed right now because you don't have office users. What you want is real people living here, spending their dollars, and you have to create the environment for them to live here. And the apartments are probably the best way to do that because it's the most economical way to bring young professionals to the market.
But Phil, you and I are both urban people. We know just building the buildings and putting people in there isn't enough. Tell me the neighborhood brings people out, brings them together, engages someone, which is more than just you. I mean, you can't be responsible for all of downtown Clayton. I get that.
Well, I think, you know, part
But
of
what
this
do you
too is
bring to the
activate.
table?
Well, you're not going to do it in one project. You're going to have to do multiple projects to create the texture you're looking for. We've been working with Michelle on how do you activate that Shaw Park in a much more dramatic way. It's multiple things. So when we go into the Grove, that's why I own 75 acres down there. I can't do it in one project, but I can do it in multiple projects that bring people together. You also bring, ultimately, when you start bringing young people here, it'll change the mix of retail. Really don't have the microbrews that you see in the city or the restaurants and the outdoor seating, that all comes through a collection of repertoire that you bring. You can't do it all in one building and fix what a city hasn't been able to accomplish because it's been too expensive for the young professional to come here and buy and be a part of it. And I think our whole chemistry is changing in the sense that young people don't necessarily want to own things. They want to experience things. They want to use their money in a much different way. And we see it dramatically in what we're doing in the city. And we create these more experiential environments and community feel, because we will create activities through how we run this apartment building. You just don't let people live there. You engage them with the community and how you interact with it. And it happens through probably 5, 6, 7 projects that you put together that bring this dynamic to the city.
Everything you say, I agree with. I just like to think that every time a building comes into Clayton, it adds something to that experiential.
Sure, which I think we will with the
experience.
rooftop pool and the amenities that we'll have there, the workout facilities, the chemistry. And we'll have 350 people, 300 plus people that weren't here in Clayton before. And I think we're missing the young person here in a dramatic way.
At the end, we have to go through this schedule of points. You have to have 30 points, is that right? 10 of public benefits?
Sure.
And we may get a sense of where we are on that and then decide what to do. But I've talked enough, so let me pass.
So this is a
forward.
$137 million project. So it's making a huge impact in terms of our investment in the city, and it's one of many that we hope to bring. But you know, there's a one of our biggest challenges right now is just the upside down economics of building. The cost of everything has been inflated. Interest rates are up. So part of what we spent the last year is how do we get this thing dialed in so we can actually do it? And so we had to look at a lot of the structure elements of the garage, keeping it separate from the podium of the high rise, and looking at just the physical dimensions and structure of the building. All the materials, and actually we improved materials because we had a mix of exterior elements that aren't as, I think, as clean and good looking as this ultimately turned out to be.
You know, I cannot take away from the fact it is attractive in many ways. And I'm very aware of the cost that's involved. And every time somebody like me opens their mouth, it's like cha-ching maybe a little bit. But my point is, tell me what your building adds to the quality of Clayton's downtown community. I know Sterling is a longtime citizen here, and that goes a ways with me. But I want to know, how does it fit into the big picture? And tell me, we're just not building. I used to call some other building, it looks like a vertical warehouse, you know?
Well, this is not a vertical warehouse.
No, I know.
But I think what it does is it brings people. In very simple terms, when you bring people, you bring chemistry and you bring energy and excitement.
Okay.
And when we build these things, we create amenities that nobody else has, whether it's pools, exercise, engagement. There's just lots of things in this building that speak to what young people are looking for. And Clayton, a lot of the energy, the restaurants close. When you have 300, maybe if we end up with another 1,000, 1,200 people, that changes how restaurants work and operate and who's here. And it all begins with people. And we had the same thing when you drove into the Grove. It wasn't an exciting place when I started 10 years ago. We brought a lot of other things, Urban Chestnut, we brought Chow Bon, we brought Rockwell, we brought Parquet, the Armory. It didn't happen in one building. What we're bringing is people, and when we bring people who live here, then the dynamics change dramatically.
Maybe Urban Chestnut should go in the first floor too with Sterling. I don't know. But let me move on.
Sure.
Did you want to?
Yeah, I think it's wonderful to bring more people here. I mean,
Sure.
that was part of our goal when we did our master planning effort, was to bring more people living in Clayton. And you're talking about all these wonderful establishments that I've been to that I would love to go to, but one of the problems I have, and I absolutely share Bob's concerns, you know, honestly, when you first look at your building, you're like, great, another rectangular glass building in Clayton. I understand how expensive it is, the economics of it all, but you're asking us to approve a project that it's going to be here for years and years and years. So it is our job to push you
Sure.
architecturally to make it more attractive. To that end, it's great that you're bringing people here, but I'm not seeing like, there's gonna be, I mean, let's be honest, you guys keep talking about retail, there's a bank at the corner. So, even if you go down to like the 212 building, that at least has Peel at the bottom. Or if you're gonna go down the street to Bemiston Place, there's gonna be lots of retail at the bottom of that. I'm not sure what it's all, but that will create that activation. I mean, that's part of the problem, I think, here is, again, I want to keep Sterling. They're a great, Clayton citizen, but that's where I think I'm having trouble is there's no activation down Carondelet you guys keep talking about, but we want people to come out of the building, but maybe you're going to create this great environment in the building, but
Well, I think your retail will probably happen a little differently than you're thinking, and it's not in your traditional.
I understand
Because
that. yeah.
Traditional retail is so expensive, so
Right.
daunting. And all the retailers that we have written through COVID, we had to prop up. I'm including including Rockwell. All of them struggled. And when you put them in an environment where rents are probably 35, 40 bucks a square foot, they can't do it. You got to think of a different solution. And that's why your park and some of the bigger spaces that can be creatively generated to be multi-purpose and flexible is kind of how you do it here in Clayton. And we've met with Michelle to talk about how we would look at the park and how do you bring people here. Like when I originally started officing here, you had party in the parks. It was one of the most dynamic, fun things that has kind of drifted away that could be reactivated, but you can add a lot of other things because the world's changed. People are looking for a mix of things that you can change and not just be one. You walk in 1,500 square feet that you're energized. It's hard to do that. You need spaces that are bigger, that are more indoor, outdoor, that have another dimension to it. And we're doing it like we did in the Armory. It's incredibly expensive to do something like that. And you have to have the right setting, the right place to do it. You can't just take a 1,500 square foot space and say you're going to energize the community because it's hard to do in Clayton because the rents are so high.
Right, I understand, but being creative about thinking about something to put in your building to add to the
That's
community.
why we got the pocket park. We're
And
gonna do
I think
something
that,
different.
and I do, I
We'll
think
have
that's a
people there
great
with their
addition.
dogs, their friends that have come in that you don't see today.
And I mean, I think that's a great addition. Again, I think it's just thinking of something else. All these new buildings that are going up have something else. Even Forsyth Point is going to have an entertainment component to it. So that's what I'm just not seeing as much here. And
Well, part of it is that we have Sterling Bank, so they're driving the bus. We're helping them actually do something they couldn't do on their own. They've had other developers look at this. We were the first ones to bring something that could actually financially work and incorporate them into who they want to be. They want a corporate image. And so they themselves, which they've done many times, have their own events there. That's how I see this building getting activated is through all their dynamics because they have a great customer base. So I think this is a bigger global thing that you got to solve in Clayton, and we can be a part of it, but you got to use different resources than a very expensive building that's being driven by the bank to some extent on the retail side. So they have an image. It's hard to put a bunch of other things that are going to create conflict with what they're doing. They want to make this their corporate headquarters. They're willing to invest with us dollars to create something that's not in Clayton right now. Not like every other building. This is much more dialed up, more thoughtful on all respects. There's no place here that has a terrace above the garage with all the plantings and outdoor that'll create people and activity up there that's not on any of the streets that I walk by.
I would say ditto to Bob's comments and to Bridget's comments. I do have a couple of questions and maybe they're more detailed. I'm looking at that on my screen. And what is the sidewalk to underside soffit height? Are the people short or is that a two-story space? 15 feet, okay. It looks The sidewalks, that's another question. What is the clear sidewalk width from the walking clear width side of the brick around the trees to the planting area or to the building? I mean, that looks 10 feet or so, is it?
I could find that. I would have to sit and like measure it out. I don't. 12 foot from.
Because the tree grate, it may be fine for a man's shoe, but for women's shoes, the size of women's feet, you can get caught in that. And if you're wearing high heels, forget it. You wouldn't have the experience, but take it from me.
Can you please speak into the microphone so that it's recorded? Thank you.
I think we're designing this for city standards, I believe, aren't we? With all the
As far
planters?
as, yeah, the tree planters and so on, yeah.
Okay, the planters, but you can't walk across those planters comfortably.
I don't think we intend you to walk across
Okay, what is the distance to the building
to the planters.
or to the planting that you've got in front of the building to the brick?
There is, look at the cursor here.
Yeah,
From the brick there. Edge of the building is about 8 feet,
8 feet.
and then another 4 feet to the. Or
Okay, because that really impacts the pedestrian experience. If you've got to focus on who may be coming in the other direction so that you step aside and you don't walk into each other. Or if you're walking two people and your rendering shows father and daughter maybe, you know, can they truly walk side by side? That's pedestrian experience. The plan of the pocket park, you did show that to us. I love pocket parks. I think that's a great idea. But I'm between two garages, so I've got the exhaust from both. And the Centene garage is far handsomer than your garage wall will be. I mean, from that view, it's going to be a dark space. You're putting lights in it, and yes, you can put lights during the day to brighten it up. But what you see on the sides as you look up, on one side, the Centene building, that parking garage wraps the facade around all four sides. Your garage has 3 exposed sides and 3 different elevation treatments, which I find problematic because rarely do you really see something just head on. Usually you're seeing it at an angle. So you're seeing that as you walk. And the way the pocket park is designed, that can be a shortcut. Instead of walking to the corner of Beamiston and Carondelet, you can shortcut through. So that bothers me.
So question for the park regarding the pocket park is like, we can't build anything there, so it could just be concrete, you know, like, so
Yeah.
we can do that too.
Yeah.
But I mean, we want to make it nice and improve it and make it an asset to the community. And maybe the nicer section of only went back 30, 40 feet. So it wasn't, I think there was some feedback that said it was desirable to have a connection up to the alley due to some future development on the north side of the alley, but we're trying to make it nice and interesting. And again, because of the easement, it could also just be a fence and asphalt. So
No, I think the pocket park is great. I like it. But I think it needs further refinement. And if you can get Centene to be a part of it, that would be good. I don't mind that it's open at the alley end. In fact, that can be a safety feature. Dead ends are not that safe. It would be wonderful if you could pull the retail, that cafe there. In Sydney, Australia, their downtown uses the alleys with a lot of retail. And it's wonderful. I mean, it's just like the one that you showed, I think it was Denver, one of your photographs. I would think about that, and I realize economics. I've dealt with that. Let's see. I think that's it.
I think I'm in agreement with everything that's been said before. I do like the idea of bringing people into the city. I just think the building is just a little underwhelming. I mean, it's definitely better than what is there now. Let's not miss that point. But I do think, like the thought behind, what you have on Beamiston with like the punched openings, the texture, like that to me, creates like the pedestrians like wanting to walk by there and stuff. I think what you have along Carondelet, however, people are just passing by. Like there's no interaction with the building really. There's no, I mean, even like planters or something needs to be there because right now, like all that is on the same plane, right? Except for that setback on the second floor. Is that right? There's not even like any dimension really besides the opening into the garage.
There's like mullion cap extensions around this glass.
Pretty
Garage
much it's on
frame.
the same plane, right? Like,
Correct, like all this glass, like that first surface is all in the same plane.
right.
And then
I mean, you're just walking by. There's no real interaction with that, with the building. I mean, I don't know how you solve that with like your retail, the bank and stuff, but to me, that's just, there's no pedestrian interaction at all. And then the pocket park, I like that idea of it, but it's so hidden. I don't know if like your stair tower with the garage, if you like set it back, so you almost get a peek of it when you're like walking down, Beamiston might bring people in that are, just of the public and not just the residences of the pocket park. And I noticed in all your renderings, it's green, but that's not the case, right? It's going to be more pavers. There's no grass being grown there. It's just plants and planters. Is that accurate?
we didn't represent the park in these images. We just said reference landscape drawings in the package at least. So we just kind of always identified that the park was the landscape realm. If that makes sense.
Right. So, but it's like in that one you just skip by, it was just, so it really will just be more concrete, right?
With a series of green planters that kind of jut in and out of that pavement pattern.
Okay.
really Low ground covers. But yeah, there will be square fiberglass planters.
So let's say,
30-foot high planters of trees.
right. So let's say that Centene's is a no-go. What does that look like with that transition from your property to theirs in that space?
I think we would try to enhance that with some green, because right now it's just barren. So.
Like on their property?
Well, if we could maybe in along the path, maybe pull that paver back a little bit and plant the entire length of that of the park. That way there's at least a continuous buffer there. It could also be vertical pillars and that sort of thing to define the space better.
Okay. And then on the other side, it would just be concrete.
Well, it's
The
just
bulge.
bare, it's just bare dirt.
Right. Okay. So I mean, that's, if they don't go for it,
That's
that
right.
is a
That's right.
huge impact on that. And then also as far as like the public art, I feel like that's not very public when it's like in between two garage spaces down an alley. You know, if we want to create something that is a public benefit for all to see, I think that needs to be out more in the forefront of the building, the pedestrian experience, not just kind of tucked away in a pocket park. I know we haven't talked a ton about the overall building so far. I think, you know, when we talk about, and when I've heard the comments from everybody about just kind of a box, I mean, let's be real, that's what it is, right? I'm wondering, you know, what you did on like the second floor with that little, you know, patio, when you have like some wood elements, it seems like we're throwing in there, like on the ceiling, if that is something that you can incorporate somewhere else on the other facades of the, you know, higher up floors, just to, you know, add some interest when you're kind of looking at all these facades are just so blank. And I know you get some reflection of the sky and stuff, but that's it, right? They're pretty flat. I know you have your corners, but like, yeah, it's just, there's nothing really there. There just needs to be a little bit more interest.
I mean, this comes back to construct, like, it's not going to be like a twisting tower or a multifaceted. It's just not. So if that's what it needs to be, you know, I don't know what to say. Like, it's a box it's a rectangle with, like, again, it could just be a big glass box.
Right.
But we've placed recessed balconies. We've been thoughtful about the actual glazing detail that's being applied to the box. But I'd love to see, like, in your minds, like what like good architecture is. It'd be
I mean,
great. to-
anything even at the top of it to kind of like anchor it, I think would help. Just something to kind of like differentiate, you know, the 22 floors of some kind. It's just like, I think you've done a smart job the first 2 floors with adding the architectural details and, you know, signaling it from an architecture standpoint of what is what. I just think the remaining floors, there needs to be something.
If we cut to the chase, we're not asking you to make a spiral building or something you would find in Shanghai maybe often. But there's a way to take a glass building and, like, you talk about making breaks, you know, in it, and you punch a hole here and there, and you've got these recessed balconies, which are nice, and you're trying to put on a nice skin to the building. I hear you, and it does, but that's all we got in Clayton, basically, and we're really trying to push the envelope a bit, not to start from scratch and knock it down, okay? But to use a little imagination and try. If I walk past the building, I would like to say, God, Sterling's building, that's really something. Or I could walk and feel like I'm not walking along a dam a little bit, that there's more breaks or something a little more interesting to the building. I'm not the architect. I'll put Ellen on the spot. I mean, you know, and but there's got to be a way, and we've sent everybody back to come up with some changes, not to tear down the building, but improve it somewhat. So everybody is proud to see it in Clayton. And I agree with one thing. I mean, the $1 million issue is I want to see pedestrians on the street. And for that, you need a lot of like mini destinations in Clayton. It could be a little park, it could be a restaurant, whatever. But we want you to add to the solution, though. Be one piece of the solution, and not just be a building and say, well, it's the community's problem. We want you to be part of the community and solve the problem with us. It's very admirable what you've done. You know, at the end of the day, we have a chart which you guys prepared. You know what I'm talking about? The 30 points, and there's got to be
Correct, yeah.
10 point. And maybe at this point, it would behoove us to go through it. The bottom line is you've got to get 30 points to make it. And the city staff only gave you 28. You were short. That doesn't mean we can't push it up or whatever, but we could push it down too. And I don't want to take a vote until we think you guys have something that's going to make sure you have 30. I hate to have it voted down. If we could avoid that, if we think it's worth it to go back and try to look at your project one more time. But maybe not, we have to see. So you guys wrote comments to the project, you see that in front of you? Is it 20 points and then 10 points public? How does that go?
There's a 10-point minimum as a PUD and then 5 points per modification that's been requested. That's got it. It's a total of 30 points is the goal that they're trying to reach here.
And you guys have listed a potential of 44 points, and the city came back with 28. And just to go through it somewhat quickly, like the very top, you got permeable paver system at Pocket Park area east of Garage. They gave you asked for one and they gave you one, and I'm not sure there's much discussion on that one. And then the next one, a green roof system on top of tower. Oh. Let's go back to the other page. Okay. Here it is. Thank you. Constructing buildings exhibiting architectural distinction and significance that would make the development unique. It's a possibility of 5 points, and the city recommended 3. Is that what I have there? Okay. And this is I'll let you take it over. You know, what, to get points, what makes your building, this is something we've been talking about a lot, architectural distinction.
I think in the original application where we elicited 40, was it 44 points that we had? We gave explanation as to what we thought qualified for those points. And I don't think in a majority of those cases, we took the maximum points available, if you would. For each of those items, we actually were being conservative and not wanting to appear as if we had a perfect site project, because we don't, right? But we took less than that and still came up with well over 30.
Well, on this one, if I might,
Go ahead.
your first name again?
Jerry.
Jerry. Jerry, you requested 5 points, which is the max of that one.
Right.
And you know, we've I don't want to keep rehashing this, but from my point of view, I would be pushed just to give the 3. I mean, and do you have any other comments on that one? We've kind of beaten that horse a little bit, so.
Yeah. I right now would give it 0 to 1.
I would do it too.
I would do 1 or 2, probably.
I would do no more than 2. The next one is projects which provide or enhance public open spaces, public parks, and public park or trail access. You asked for 5 and the staff recommended 4 on that one.
Perhaps I could suggest that, I mean, there's a lot of
Yes.
points there to go through all of them. If the review board would provide us a response to your calculation of what those would be, give us something to react to, and we can come back to it and address it that way.
The only way we're going to do it is right now.
Okay.
You know,
That's
it may take a little
That's
time, but
fine.
to give you a feel, and
Sure.
we know specifically.
Yeah.
Um,
There's one particular area that maybe we can go to. I am just, because it was, when we first made our first application, there was a requirement of 25 points, or not a requirement, but a public benefit that we thought a level that was 25, and then it went to 30. And that was against back and forth sort of with staff. The additional jump from 25 to 30 related to the use of the public parking spaces. So not being underground per what the ordinance desires or spells out as a preferred public parking being underground. I hate to keep, bantering about the cost of these projects, but when you go underground with parking, it's very, very expensive. And so part of the things that Phil and others have talked about in terms of how we dialed this thing in over the last year to make it a viable, financially viable project was to redesign the project or the garage so that we did not go underneath the building, underneath the bank space, and incur the cost of that. And there was other things related to that too. We were able to make some modifications and changes that were really beneficial to making the financial viability of the project happen there. But by doing so, we eliminated having the public parking spaces underground. And that caused us to be asking for, in the PUD, another variance, if you will, and added to the requirement then from going from 25 points to 30 points.
Jerry, I hear you.
Yeah.
And I'm always very aware of making something financially feasible.
We think the public parking still works. And so therefore it does align with the ordinance and the desire of the master plan because it's there. We do have public space, public parking open to the public after hours from when the banks, and on the weekends when the bank employees are not there. So in our view, we
Right.
comply with that. It's just not underground.
I hear you, Chair, but there's enough categories
Right.
that you could easily get 30, even if the parking isn't.
Looking for two, I guess, right? We need two more.
Well, I don't know. Let me say this.
Sorry.
Can I just
Go ahead.
ask Bob, what,
Yeah.
for the public parking, just because I know the Board of Aldermen we'll talk a lot about public parking. The public parking that you're talking about, that's after hours, will that be free or will you have an arm? So it'll be,
No,
I mean,
there's only a gate in the garage when you enter and you're getting into the area that is reserved for the residents.
but but during the day, so 6 spaces provided, anytime 23 spaces provided. So during the day, it'll be primarily for bank customers and employees, right, of the bank?
Or anybody from the public.
Okay.
Could be
so the-
visitors to the retail.
Okay, so
Right.
anything, which, I mean, I think that's definitely a huge
Yeah.
benefit, which is, I mean, most
It's just
places
not
have an arm
underground.
or it's paid, right,
Right.
right.
Can I just ask you this, Chair? How
Sure.
do people know there's public parking there?
Signage, we'll do adequate signage for it.
All
Sure.
right. And so the next one with the open space provided and available, and you talk about stormwater management.
Mhm.
And you requested 5 and the staff gave you 4.
So in our conversations through our civil engineer, Stock and Associates, and I know the committee's very familiar with George and his group, and we use them exclusively. In their discussions with MSD, we are putting in a large stormwater detention vault in the building. That actually added to the cost of the project, but that was a requirement from MSD. Relatedly, where the pocket park is located, underneath that area, there is a pipe for MSD, and that's why we cannot build over that structure there. So as Tom said, we could leave it as it is when we're finished with the building, or we can try and beautify it and do something on it. But that's the MSD. As we look at that and what their requirements were, and we had to put in the cost of this detention box, if you will, in the basement of the building. That to us spoke to, accommodating that requirement, 100%.
So with regard to this one, projects which provide or enhance public open space,
Mhm.
public parks and public park or trail access. And we're talking about the alley and your stormwater management. Any comment on that? Anybody? With regard to 4 points?
I mean, I would give them, with the open space, like, I mean, if we're talking about the projects which provide or enhance public open space, I mean, I didn't really talk too much or ask very many questions, but the pocket park, I think, is a great addition, especially if you can get Centene on board, which I think is what that's just because it's such a upper, I mean, I think if you can really enlarge that space and make it a great area, I mean, I think like what Helen said, having access to, Forsyth, well, not necessarily Forsyth, but again, just having that alley access, I think is a great benefit, especially with the lights and, places to sit. I mean, I would certainly give you 5 points for that, because I think it's something interesting and unique that Clayton doesn't have right now. And I think it would be a great
Thank you.
asset. But I think until we kind of are clear on what, maybe just so that we understand better as to whether or not the space would be wide open.
Yeah.
Or,
I think
that
our-
wooden strip wouldn't be like mulch or concrete because Centene won't partner with you. I don't, so.
I think the takeaway is that there's favorability for the pocket park and there's need for more description and more programming of that. And, it's the same response we had from Centene. It's like, absolutely, we like it. It's a good idea. However, what does it look like?
Right.
So I
think the
I hear
pictures are
that.
great that you guys have provided. I think that gives a pretty
Like,
clear
I think it
idea.
can be enhanced, though. I think we can come back with a better sort of description of that to some of your points, Bob.
Having like a mural on your wall. I mean,
Right.
I think, again, I think people on the Board of Aldermen would eat that up. So, I mean, we just did a mural down on Demond. I think having a mural along that wall would be wonderful. I mean, that would, brighten things up, because you're not getting sun all the time.
One
So-
thought we had, but didn't want to really talk about it too much because you can't guarantee it and everything, but across the street, the hotel,
Mhm.
it'll be an inviting sort of, as you come out in and out of that driveway there, you're checking in, come, like, what's that? We can activate it. We can have things going on there. You come out after checking in, it's dinner, you're looking for a place to go for a cocktail or whatever. And, there's activation across the street. So
Right.
I think that's part of our thinking on it.
And the other thing I was going to ask
Sure.
about parking was, where you might also be able to get more points, which I don't know, but if you had charging stations that would be available in the public area and not just in the residential area. I mean, I just feel like if somebody can come in and they're a bank customer or
Right.
somebody, I
Were
mean,
there
it's just an
any,
idea. I don't know if you could get more.
We do have what's minimally required, I think, and then some in the residential part of it, not in the public area there. But
Just
we
an
can-
idea,
Sure.
maybe. I don't know if there would be it would be available for.
Yeah, I agree with Bridget. When I was doing my homework, I knew nothing about the pocket park because there was, it was mentioned, but there was no description,
Right.
What is it? What are you thinking of doing? So I basically downgraded you from what the staff gave you from a 4 to a 3. But if you come back, I think you could get a 5.
Great, thank you. We know that it has to be, there's got to be more description of what it is, the width, how does it feel when you're in there? So.
Yeah.
What do you give it?
I agree with Helen. I was just going to say that. And knowing if Centene's going to be part of it, because I think that will really change that space and really make it something where people want to go. Otherwise, it might just seem a little odd to have half of it done and not. So I think that's a key factor to get 5.
Sure, I appreciate that. And we'll endeavor to try and do that so we can get 5. One of the things that I'll add to what Phil said earlier, one project, we look at the pocket park as beneficial to what we're trying to do too. But I think there's another way to look at it too, I would submit, and that is to consider that it's an initiative that maybe inspires other developments as they go along to look at setback areas, to look at areas that are otherwise overlooked or not even thought about as far as doing something that's, a little creative in activation and beautification and all that. An anecdotal example, not the Denver one, but is of a similar area along the river up in Chicago, where it was a space there across the street from Sears Tower that had been empty for years and years and years. And the developer I worked for many years ago created a park there. There was no visibility to that from the street level because it was at Lower Wacker Drive. The only visibility came off of where the river was. But it became a hit and it inspired everybody else along the river to do things when the boats and everything were going along there. or people were walking along there, they could look across and they could see what was going on. So in a way, that's part of our thinking too. Does that make sense?
I would
Sure.
give it a 3 too, because no matter how you dress up the alley or that green space, it's stuck between two garages. And it's never going to be one of these nice like Denver's alleys. So the next one, so
Bob, can I add one thing? I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Not sure, was it you, Cammie, that mentioned it, or Helen? We have been in anticipation that there'll be some receptivity to the pocket park. We have been, but we haven't finalized it yet. We're still working through with structural engineering and all of those kinds of things have to make to prove it out, prove the concept out. But we have been examining taking that staircase. Forget who mentioned it. You did? Yeah. Good idea. And sliding it and moving it back or reconfiguring it somehow such that that area where the staircase is, which is a hard corner right now, we can't move the driveway into where the parking structure is, or the parking structure will never work. But somehow taking and reconfiguring where that staircase is to pick up another 14 feet, which is about how wide that is. So add that to, and assuming Centene's piece in there, now we're really talking about, 35, 40 foot of a, maybe not all the way back, because we lose parking spaces if we go back too far. It's something of a more funneled, entrance right there that can make that even more. We're working on that, so.
as we
Sorry,
move-
Bob.
as we move to the next one, the planters along South Beamiston frontage, you see that one there? They requested 1 point, the staff gave it 1 point. Does anyone have a different number or any comment otherwise? Okay, so that's one. And then use of the Silva cell system to control rainwater, they requested 1, the city is at 0. And if you see the comments, they're already a standard part of the streetscape and therefore staff does not recommend awarding points. Does anyone have a problem with going down to 0? Okay. The next one is the lead silver guidelines. The applicant requested 1, and the city's comments are that these are duplicate points to provide points for lead silver. Plus a design, I know elsewhere we're going to see that for 1 point, and they went to 0. Does anyone have a different opinion? Okay. The next one is the efficient HVAC system. We've seen those very common in most projects now that come before us. You requested 1, the city staff agreed with you, 1. Does anyone here have a different opinion on number? No? Okay. The next one is building siting. The project is situated on an urban site with, this deals with sustainable building design and building siting. The project is situated on an urban site with connections to public transportation and many services within walking distance. The orientation of the tower element will provide views in all directions. The heat island effect will be limited by use of concrete paving and new turf area.
I did have a question about that. The heat island effect, doesn't turf and concrete both contribute to that? You're saying,
I'm not sure.
I mean, turf like absorbs heat like crazy, even more so than concrete.
Or contribute to the heat island?
Right, I mean, you're saying that it will help limit it at the last sentence, but that's. I'm assuming you're talking about like the pocket park, right?
Right there, new turf area. That was.
Yeah, but it's still really heat and the turf.
Okay. You requested 1. I'm having problems. This looks like almost a basket. We're throwing everything in it on this one. And it's connected to public transportation. It has a great view. And there's a heat island. I don't know why that deserves a point. My recommendation would be 0 on that one.
So the staff recommendation of minimum point has to do with how that criteria is described within the PUD points within our code right now, which I can pull up for you.
Appropriate building site, is that
Right.
defined or anything?
That has to do with the standards for lead certification. That's where that point came from within our city code. So I think that they described things that
Okay.
go beyond, but the 1 point is satisfied with the location. It actually has to do with what the architect mentioned in the original planning of how the tower is located at a certain portion of the site in combination with some other elements for the urban form. So that's where staff came to the
Building
1 point.
signing is described as something that points should be awarded, although it's not defined. And I think these guys just did the best they could under the circumstances. So I have no problem with 1 point.
Can we go back up to the Silvacell
Yeah.
item there? The staff analysis says that Silvacells are already part of the standard streetscape. They are, the standard Silvacell detail does not allow stormwater into the system. What we're proposing here, there is an alternate detail that uses the same system, but periodically along the street, there are inlets that take the stormwater down and through the system. So that's what the explanation there, that we're controlling stormwater. The standard detail does not control stormwater, but what we're proposing does control stormwater. It does actually clean the water before it goes into the storm drain.
Yeah, Public Works reviewed their details and it does not meet our current form. So they recommended not approving it for that reason. The city would be responsible for maintaining that moving forward, and it would not meet our city standard streetscape. And it also, Public Works did not believe that it met MSD standards to have a connection to the storm sewer. And so for that reason, they recommended not allowing the non-standard version, which would result in just the standard version of the Silvacell system. If you wanted a non-standard system, then you would also likely have to be responsible for the continued maintenance of streetscape.
And then the next one starts with on-site waste management, your recycling materials for the
Right.
project. You recommended 1. The city staff agreed with you. Does anyone have a problem with the 1? Okay, no. The next one overlaps the recycled building materials. Must be another line item. They requested 1. They gave them 1. Anyone have a problem with 1? No. And then there's EV charging stations, and you guys have 8. I'm just kind of curious with the quickly growing electric vehicles, the hybrids, especially, is 8 enough for all those residents? You have more affluent residents and they'll probably have more electric
Likely,
cars.
I mean, it's a minimum, right? And most likely it's not enough, but it's also, we don't know what that demand's going to be, and they are very costly to put in
Are
place.
they?
Yeah, very costly.
Will you hardwire the garage in order to enable more? Is that?
It's one of the things we're working
I mean,
through,
just
trying to
'cause
figure out where exactly to do that. It's very possible.
I mean, Bridget made the great point. This building will be here for a long time.
That's right.
And one thing we do know, the hybrids and all electric cars are going to grow dramatically. And whatever you have today certainly won't be enough for tomorrow. And will you have the capability of adding more? I mean,
It's part of our engineering evaluation as we go through the process of how many do we need. There also is there's a charge for that, and how you meter that for the tenants to use of it and everything. We have to figure out how that works. It also takes up a space. So there's a
Anyway,
lot of variables.
I hear you, but I just know 8 won't be enough.
Very comment here. So
He's an
we
electric car
have-
driver.
I've had electric cars since 2014.
But we're hearing from a bicyclist here. I mean, with validity. you
So
know.
we have, I think we have 12 electric chargers at our office that I had Tesla put there. And that charges over 3,000 cars per month when it first month it opened. The one in Brentwood has, I think, 14 charges over 14,000 a month. So it's not necessary you have a charge spot for all of them. This could be a common one, or we can make it expandable, or we could have it set up so the individual wanted to have his own charging station as a resident could be expandable.
Okay. I hear you.
Yep. So that's, we have it, if you were to come to any of our, like our office, you'd see 8, 9 cars there all the time. And it services thousands of cars.
Okay. Anyway, the city recommended, I mean, they asked for one, the city recommended one. Anyone have a problem with that? Okay. And then we go back to the permeable, I turn the page now, on top of the page. The permeable paver system at Pocket Park, which is very attractive, I think. The city, they asked for one, the city concurred. Does anyone have a problem with the city's recommendation? The green roof system, we see that a lot in our projects. The developer asked for one and the city agreed. Anyone have a problem with one? This is the NGBS certification. Can somebody give me a 30-second summary of that? What is that? The NGBS certification?
Yeah,
Is that
so
just the green building?
it's the green globe, right? Green, were you doing green building, green globes? It's a certification similar to LEED, which is why we didn't recommend a point for the LEED certification plus this other one that they're doing. So,
Well, that answers the question.
right, so they're very similar characteristics and requirements in order to qualify, and they are also going for silver level, excuse me. So,
And the next one refers to public parking, including EV charging, will be provided on the lower level. Let's see what the include. This is where Jerry, you were talking about this. I think it was you. Inclusion of a below-grade public parking facility located underneath the proposed development.
There's no below grade parking.
I now understand what you're talking about because you could have as much as 10 points for that. And you asked for one and they gave you 0 because there is none.
Right.
Yes, okay.
10 points would be great, but it's tens of millions of dollars to go underground.
But it brings to the forefront why you brought that up. Okay. Next one is inclusion of parking spaces specifically available and designated for public parking. And you talk about the lower level of the garage will include parking for the bank office and the public. 6 spaces provided anytime. 23 spaces provided after 5 o'clock. So during the day, you only have 6 spaces available. And at night, you open it up. Do I understand that right?
That's correct.
Okay, and you asked for 5 and the city staff recommended 3. 6 spaces just isn't a whole lot to me. I could see them doing 3. I could go down to, I'll just say 2 for me on that one. Any comments?
I put down 2 also.
Same.
I would tend to stay at 3 and even go up to 4, because I think in the evenings, I mean, we don't, I mean, I think in the evenings, if they're willing to let people come in and not, and there's not an arm and it's easy public parking after 5 PM and on the weekends, I mean, I think that's pretty advantageous for the area.
That's a
I
valid
would
point
stay
there.
at 3.
Okay. Okay. The next one is the deals with a significant form of public art in any media. And Jerry, you talk about the project will incorporate a street level. Is this the one that's going to be in the park?
I mean, and we put some examples in the landscape plan, to talk about the pocket park. It's clearly not fully developed, whether we put a piece in there or whether we locate it in the center as the example showed, or whether we put multiple pieces in there, whether we tie it in somehow to the, the Clayton Art Fair as a designated area or something like that. That's part of the programming that we need to continue to develop and work with, the Clayton Art Council and others. It could be that there's as somebody mentioned, a component of it that's a mural on the garage or on Centene Garage, different things like that. So
I agree. It's a little speculative to know what you're exactly going to do at this point.
our intent in requesting 5 points is that we'll do it in the way that's going to be.
I believe you're well intended. And that's why I always recommend 3 at this point in time. And I know you're going to do something. And
Okay, great.
I agree with the city on 3. Comments by you guys? 3? Ellen?
I say 3, but I guess it just all determines what that pocket park really becomes, because if it's not going to come to really much, then putting that, public piece of art there, kind of a moot point. So I guess 2 or 3.
Was there ever any thought to putting any public art at the corner? Like not in the public park, but somewhere outside the building, like under that overhang that you recess a little bit?
Under the overhang presently is a logo on the pavement for Sterling,
Okay.
similar to what they have there in the current plaza.
Right.
So retaining that. At this point, there wasn't any consideration of doing that, but I think that's something that, in conjunction with working with the Art Council and things like that, and some consultants on it, it's a possibility. You just haven't, to answer your question, we haven't done it yet.
I mean, yeah, we can leave it as
All right,
is.
3.
Mhm.
And the next one is other public benefits. In this one, they talk about the reduction of curb cuts, which
Yeah.
you did discuss in your presentation very well.
We actually eliminated 2. One on Binghamton side there and one on Corona Light as well. And also separating and I think staff acknowledged this, separating the service traffic, delivery trucks, things like that, and the pedestrian pathways, as well as the resident vehicle traffic.
And he also talked about the facade of the garage blending in with the building.
Right.
And the staff recommended 3. I'll go along with that. I mean, you don't have a problem with that? 3. And then the next one is the addition of 254 residential. We're talking about other public benefits here. And this is, they cite addition of 254 residential units to Central Business District. I think we've talked about this a bit,
Yeah, I
like what
think
it brings to
Phil's
what it brings to
mentioned.
the downtown.
Right.
And the city staff balances the idea that you're increasing the residential density with the long blank walls, or I guess with the garages. Yes, it would remove curb cuts and pedestrian interruptions, and the staff recommended 2. I think the point there is bringing people to live in Clayton downtown in large numbers like you propose is great. It's good. But for a public benefit, just bringing in the residents, we'd like to see something more to warrant a 5, bring the people and let's see some public benefit that for them as well. And so the city recommended 2, and I think I'm going to go along with that. Anyone else have a number you want to give?
I think
No?
the only thing, if I may,
ahead,
that I
sir.
would add for consideration to that is that, this project is intended by design, while it's got to be cost effective and all that, but to attract it's market rate apartments. So it's generally higher income residents. We anticipate it to be like 212 was when it came on the market, leading the demographic, leading the economic buying power of the residents that come to the city, right? And the finishes that we're doing in the units, the amenities deck, all of that speaks to those things, the electric car charging, the pocket park, et cetera. And so we don't consider the population that's going to occupy there as being detrimental, quite the opposite. And maybe we're not going to supply all of the retail components to satisfy the demands of that population, but that buying power that comes along with that, because we are creating a very attractive, a very high-end, upper scale product, is going to benefit all the retail uses in town. So, thank you for letting me make that point.
And then you have incorporation of a public dog run with secure fencing, artificial turf, and amenities. Is that, now, to me, I'd give you a 2 for that. You asked for 2, I give you a 2, and the city recommends 1, because one thing we do not have are places in the heart of Clayton downtown to walk your dog very often, even though it's only 8 feet wide.
We come back with more description of what that pocket park is all about. And we evaluate, and we have more conversations with Centene, evaluate what we can do with the staircase and presence off of the street there in that particular area. We'll ask for 5. No, I'm kidding.
But
5
parking
cumulatively.
Put parking underneath there, maybe you can get it. I don't know.
I don't think that will happen at all.
Anyway, that's just me. Anyone else have a comment? 1? The city recommended 1?
Yeah, I would say when you come back with the pocket park developed, because right now we're going on
Yeah.
hearsay and some pictures. We don't even have copies of that to say, hey, you promised this. This is what you showed us. We don't have that. So I think when we get something more concrete, something that we can look at in our hands, do our homework, then, more than 1.
More than 1, great.
Right.
Okay.
You might get the 2 that you've asked for, and if you ask for 5, that could happen too.
Terrific. I mean, we're motivated to do that, clearly. We want to do this project. Want to bring this benefit, all these benefits and everything to the city. We want to add to the already stunning skyline. This is a Main and Main sort of location, maybe not exactly Main and Main, but very close to Main and Main, very close to here. It's centric as far as we look at it. It's walking distance to the metro station, right? So it does have a transit ability there too. It's not as if it's on the other side of Maryland, right? I can suggest that we'll come back with more detail about the pocket park and what we can do relative to that street presence. The facade on the entire side of the building and everything, I heard you. Changing that, that's an expensive proposition that we'll look at, but I don't know that we'll make significant changes to the way we've designed the building. I think we've taken that into consideration for reasons Tom and everybody else talked about already.
Right. I mean,
We'd love to do this project too, so,
I would love for you to do the project too.
yeah, I'm sure.
And I'm not asking to put a square in a circle, but I'm speaking for me now. I would just like to see a little more flavor or something to dress it up a little bit. I'm not telling you to put all brick or something on it or anything like that, but I think just bringing, I think that one of the bottom lines is just bringing all the people into Clayton is a start, but it's not the end. We're looking to see how it fits into the community of downtown and how it adds to the community of downtown Clayton. Clear. With that,
I'm sorry, can I just ask
Sure.
Jerry one more
Sure.
question? Just, it sounded like you guys did have a video. I just think it's helpful to have that 3D experience that's not just like a flat picture. So maybe when you,
Yeah, we can.
and when you
we
guys
can
come
do that.
back, we could see it, would be great, you know, that
Yeah.
I feel like would be really helpful.
We've done some animations.
would you like us to see
Part
it?
of it is like, I've been to ARBs in Chicago, other cities, Kansas City, and like, we haven't gotten any feedback. We just have gotten, we don't like the building. So I have a couple things I'd like to look at with you all and just say, we did test these other things,
Go for it.
okay? I don't know how to pull that up, but I plugged my jump drive back in over here. I'm hitting the space bar. Oh, there we go. It came up. The one question is on the southern facade, like the garage. I mean, we could clad it in metal, like we could clad it in precast. To us, a thoughtful glass pattern that's timeless is like much better than either one of those options. So is it brick? I mean, what, I'm just throwing things out there. We don't have to like talk about it. So that's, as the designer, that's got to go back and come back to you all and make a major investment to make all these changes and then say, well, I don't like that either. That's why we need to get a little more response. So one thing we looked at on the southern facade was, yeah, we could clad it in metal or perforation metal. And to me, like, I don't think you all would like that. The other thing we talked about was if there was a green strip along the base. Yes, there's no retail there. And there are existing curb cut planters that do come out beyond the property line. But that would be something that the city would have to buy into. So if I go to the bird's eye view, I've kind of identified here that yellow marker. All these planters come out beyond their property line at that blue edge. So if the city would allow us to do that, that's something that could help soften up that edge. So again, if I flip from what we had previously to another proposal was, again, the walkway is a little narrower, but you have a strip of landscape planter. So that's one potential solution. And again, I just want to get your feedback because we have the difficult
Planters.
task of going back and coming back and hoping that you like it too.
Would the planters be on the sidewalk?
They would project beyond our property line, yes, but there's precedent for it already along that street where there are already planters beyond the property line. So we would just be taking that curb cut that exists and pulling it up. But again, that's something we abandoned because we thought you wouldn't appreciate it. So that's one look. I'm going to flip through a couple different other options real quick. So this is that current condition where we know you all want retail there. And if you saw the plan, there's basically some parking spaces beyond that in a drive lane. Like there's no depth for retail. And we thought, well,
Can't you make depth for retail? You just carve out a box. So that's what I don't
I'm
know.
just saying, then you add a whole level of parking structure that's $3 million. And it's just like, there's major impact. So one thing we did talk about was like, rather than putting retail there, could you create like a little recess that had a landscape strip that pulled up into like kind of this organic bench? And then we could use maybe the wall surface with, that could be our art installation. So again, it's not activated with retail, it's activated by an art installation. So you're covered, you could sit there and have a cup of coffee from the cafe that we're providing along Beamiston and come down and sit here. And at night, it would activate the street. It would be illuminated with bright colors, illuminating the white brick. But we abandoned this because we thought the pocket park would be more attractive. So
Was
if
it
you, if
either
no one
or?
is buying into
Why is
this,
it in lieu of the pocket
Either
park?
or?
well, potentially, yes. I mean, the reality is that pocket park has a price tag on it, just like this would. And it's kind of like, well, what does the city, and again, this is where we want your feedback, like, would we rather have glass coming down or this recess with, that becomes our art piece? We can't have the art pieces everywhere.
Well, I don't want to lose the pocket park. I mean, I'm just speaking for myself.
So we viewed this
Right.
as a pocket park. It ends up being about a 16-foot recess into the building that's covered. And again, it could have like an organic bench that comes up that's cut out of laser cut out of aluminum, and that becomes part of that art sculpture. And then the linear strips in the brick are like these lights that could change color. So again, that becomes our art piece. It's not just a sculpture on the corner of a
I guess-
property line.
I guess I'm having trouble seeing that because I just feel like, to me, it just looks like, it just looks like green underneath a roof. I don't feel like you can sit under there at all. I just.
So what
feel
we're,
like you do it. and so-
what we were showing was like that this came up and turned into a bench, and then there could be
Oh,
planters.
like on
And
the
then
left- on the-
these linear elements are like color changing lights. So again, that becomes the art installation.
I mean, I think that's definitely better than what is proposed
I mean,
today.
proposed is glass, right?
Correct. So, but I don't think in lieu of the pocket park that this would not be more of a public benefit to me than the pocket park. I think
Okay.
I think this is better looking
Getting
than the,
feedback is great because
yeah.
at this point, it's just, I don't like the building. And then, like I said, I've been to multiple ARBs all over the Midwest. So I need something more than that to go
But
back.
I mean, I don't, we have provided you feedback. I mean, we have said that this is. a
Most of
big
it's been on the
class-
pocket park. And again, we want to find
That's
a
been the
sol-
biggest, I
yeah.
feel like, public benefit.
Yeah.
So I feel like we have provided you feedback. I mean, quite honestly, the World News Building looked a lot like this.
Yeah.
And when we provided feedback, they did some architectural details that were different. That was the feedback that was
Yeah,
provided. So
and
I
we-
guess that's what we're talking to you about.
And I was the one making those
I
adjustments.
I would say this.
Well, so I mean, I don't.
And again, here's another example, like to say, well, if it's not, you're not saying make it a brick building, is it just adding detail like here, like pulling the frame out? I'm just clipping stuff together while we're talking.
Back to the previous slide. just
So that's what we had previously, and then we said, well, maybe that brow gets,
Where you went to the indentation.
oh, this guy?
Yeah, look, go back.
Yeah,
No, no.
I'm just zooming in so you
Okay,
can
now
see.
go
a little
back
better.
one, just one. There's the wall with the glass. Where's the wall of the glass? It was right before it. Now you see that. Imagine me walking by that and walking by this. This is a much more breathable space.
Yeah.
You know,
And this is great feedback. I mean, that's why I was trying to like clip a bunch of stuff together. We'll
This
say,
to
well, we got
me-
over here, if we could get
This
some.
to me makes the sidewalk area and the public area, you give it a better benefit. This is a public benefit. You've probably earned, for me, I can't speak for them, you've probably earned yourself some more points just by having that.
10 points.
Oh, probably 20.
And I apologize, like, I don't want to come off as like, I want to find the solution while we're all here, if you don't mind, like
I'm just
looking at
telling you
some of
how I
these
react,
pieces,
that's all.
because, yeah, we want to go back and see if we can make
But
adjustments.
I don't
and
want to
make-
sacrifice the alley, and I'm not the greatest fan of the alley, but it's at least something, you know?
I was trying to think what else. So this was another example, is like, we show that metal frame, like, just by pulling it out and giving it more projection, and we could test colors and do other, and maybe it could be that this second floor is masonry or something else. Like, is that, we just don't want this much glass? Is that kind of the,
I think something, I like this, I mean, this is a change for sure, but I think on the upper 22 floors, there needs to be something else that's just not so, it's the same.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to add like this browse, you know what I mean? Just somewhere, whatever architectural detail you come up with, but there just needs to be something else added with it for those other 22 floors. I think that's when we're getting like that box feel.
yeah, and that's okay. I think what it'll come at is we'll probably lose some balconies and add maybe some architectural detailing in to offset. Does that make sense? So like, we started with just like, hey, we could make this beautiful, clean box that has equally proportioned recesses throughout that western facade, and that was enough. And if you're saying it's not, that's great feedback, and we can take that and adjust. I think what else I was
I mean,
putting
the
together.
truth of the matter with the glass and it's so vertical coming up to the sidewalk. And I know you say you're breaking it up, and you do break it up, I mean, which is key always. But it's still basically a office building to me, but you did break it up a lot. You do have balconies. I'll give you all the credit.
And they're
Thank you.
balcony, recessed balconies in
Yeah.
a tower like this, they're very expensive moves. So we can certainly eliminate them and do something else. And check what else we can.
Well, I mean,
study.
I've always, I mean, I like the balconies. I mean, I think people appreciate balconies who live in those buildings. Have you ever, and again, I don't understand the expense, of course, but you know, you have the recessed second floor space for the Sterling Bank employees. Have you ever thought about like recessing another on the other side? That would be
It actually,
maybe
we.
something public, like something public for the retail, you know, like if you have a retail space and if it's a cafe, then people could go upstairs and sit upstairs in a recessed balcony. I don't know, something to add to
The reality is like on this strip, because of the parking structure and the parking demand for a building like this.
Yeah.
I wish, I don't have the plan pulled up, but this thing's packed full of, well, one, Sterling, we
Right.
have to have the retail location. And then two, the core for the building, the lobby, we do have 1,800 square feet of retail. It's not just the Sterling Bank retail. We have another retail plan down here.
Right.
And then everything else is like gas meters and everything you need to have for the building. And there's nowhere else to put it other than the alley side, that northwestern corner. So it is just a program piece of, there's no room to even, we struggled to fit in that 1,800 square foot retailer on that level at the sacrifice at residential amenities. So we didn't just.
Thinking
we
like
did
people,
try-
you
yeah.
bring in people from outside to go to the cafe, sit upstairs, you
Yeah.
know, I mean, I'm.
And we did have. Sorry, I'm flipping between presentations now. I mean, when we planned those entries, we recessed them so they're covered and protected from the rain, the residential and the retail.
I mean, I think you've done a good job of expressing your needs.
Yeah.
The things that you are limited by and not just expense, but just structurally.
Here, I'll pull this up and this may be the last. If it'll play, we'll see. So this is a little more than just stills, but again, I looked at maybe that brow gets extruded a little bit more. Maybe there's more detail. Maybe there's a different material, and we can definitely investigate that. But again, at the pedestrian level with the 15-foot floor to floor, that's where we started looking at adding in these masonry elements, punched openings, so there was a different texture at that pedestrian base. And again, same thing with this commercial second level piece. We could extend that brow. There's more shadow, more depth to the building. As you work your way over, you know, like I said, these little golden thing, they're just icons to represent that it could be some linear art installation. So there was, if it wasn't at the Pocket Park, it was maybe along Beamiston. You know, we added architectural detail, interest, recess these. There's soffits with lighting, so it's not just a glass building, especially at the pedestrian level. Yeah. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out how to drive this thing. And then again, at the Sterling, we have other additional materials. We embossed our emblem and have a higher upgrade flat work finish there at the corner. Let's see. I can pull up Google Earth. So this is as we work around the corner. Again, if we were allowed to install that green space, like it just kind of softens up the base, but you know, we're being thoughtful about that could just be a big solid wall of brick and we're adding detailing and reveal and shadow line. As you look up as the pedestrian, you see this second story space with another material transition, a recess at the corner. Again, I know we've seen this in some of the stills. I'm just kind of reiterating as we talk about the animation. And then this is potentially that location where you could have that little recessed art installation potentially. So it's not a retail spot, but it could be pretty awesome at night and during the day, just a spot to like at least get covered if it's raining as you work your way down mid-block. And it could be a signature piece really for that southern facade. So as we turn the corner, we have a masonry element, vertical piece, kind of a termination move at the end of the southeastern corner. You know, add material and detail to that parking entry point. And then as you work your way up, again, I'd have to test and see how wide this, I can't measure it off this model, but this is the point where this is all city standards. There's also an accepted standard where this slides over and the trees move out. And you could add a planter here and maintain your walkway if that's something you're not opposed to. Does that make sense? Like basically, there's two standards. There's one where there's an 18 or 24-inch brick strip, or this planter gets shoved right up against the curb and you could add a planter along the building. But we didn't think you guys would want to do that. So
Well, the truth of the matter is, I'm with Helen, you know, I want as much width in the sidewalks as possible.
and all that would do, and I agree with you, like, to me, these street trees and this same detail that I'm showing framed, this edge could slide right over to here, the sidewalk could get wider, and then you'd take basically that 2 foot or 30-inch strip and make it a planter over here. But again, the city would have to be okay with that. So one over here on the right could be that recess that we talked about with the illuminated art. We showed it as glass rather than masonry because again, you're reflecting, you're seeing context of the surrounding buildings. Just because it's hard to program a retail
But
location.
like
there.
that view that you just showed, I mean, it was like solid glass.
Yeah.
You know, and if you had that recess there, it would be a much more,
Yeah, I was trying to
attractive
find that
look.
animation. There was one at some point. I
but like,
deleted it.
you know, that view was all glass, but if
I
you
agree
were-
with Bridget, you know, along Carondelet where you punch open the wall for Sterling and you have that balcony, it really adds a human feel. It adds, it just makes it more attractive. I like that.
That's what,
Feature
I mean,
you
that
put
was
in the building.
when we went through those diagrams earlier on, like we do have a lot going on along on this facade. And I think that could be the weak point. And again, it'd be great to have a brew pub there, but it'd be a 900 square foot brew pub, you know? So there'd be room for some kegs in there and a couple of tables. I mean, that's the reality. Like, I'd love to have that there too. I just know what goes into the guts of the building and there's nowhere to go with it. So trying to think what else. That's
Tom, do you have the examples of the glazing? I know one of the staff comments was asking if this was very mirrored, like it appears in the renderings, and you guys provided some additional samples for what your AB pattern would be there. And I think
Yeah.
it might be helpful for you to go through that.
trying to see what this says here. So there was additional detail requested for that garage screen. And let me flip. Sorry, I'm used to driving a different type of software here. Thank you. So currently, this is a little vignette of how that glass would work. So there'd be 4 surfaces, right? The 1, 2, the inside face, 3, and 4. All the third faces would have this gray translucent. It's not a film. It's a baked on ceramic on the third surface, so it's protected. You couldn't go scratch from the garage side. All the surfaces would have that, so that again, you can't go up to that glass and see up a car bumper. It's basically diffused glass that allows light through. You can kind of see how you can see through and see, unless a car was parked immediately against the surface, you know, you pull it a foot away, you can't. So the idea being when you're on the garage side, that face is glowing. So all the glass would have that on the third surface. Everywhere else would have this frit. Or every other panel as part of this. So this was kind of a vignette of that. If that's what you're asking, Anna. But the other, like I said, the other options are big precast concrete bands that are painted, or which is adjacent just to the east of us, or metal, some metal structure. And to us, like the glass felt better and honestly is more expensive than either one of the solutions I just listed. So we thought we were doing something nice there.
In those architectural drawings, it calls out a vinyl screen on the garage.
So
What is,
at the first concept ARB, when we talked about this building, one comment that came out of that was it looked like 2 buildings because we had a building that had punched openings and glass. So we went with all glass because that was some of the feedback we got, was we wanted one unified building. The other thing was that they wanted to see garage cladding along the alley. So what we looked at there are these panels, and we provided these views at the request of the city planning group. Was basically a shot from here to see what you would see. So this is standing just outside our building looking south. So the reality is you view these panels from 250, 300 feet away, and you just see the tops of them, unless you're walking down the alley, right? And that's what these two views we provided were about, was to say, this is further back. So the further back you get a glimpse. So this may be from 400 feet away. So what we had talked about using was, there's these vinyl mesh materials that would be then applied to a frame. Here's an example of it. This is right outside of $100 million Olin School of Business over at WashU on their garage cladding. So Jamie Kolker, who was the campus architect that was responsible for all the East End transformation, actually, we worked on this together. So it is a vinyl fabric, but it's not like, I don't know. It's a nice product. So to us, to request garage screening on an alley side, we wanted to come up with something that was thoughtful, but also not glass, right? Like, because at some point, a building could be built where Napoli occurs, and we've clad a garage in glass. So that was our rationale. It's like we're doing something nice and thoughtful that may be covered up someday. And there's just some details of how it would occur. Ooh, sorry, guys. Not familiar with Adobe. So we basically just pulled, and the pattern and openness is all based on the garage breathability. So that was part of it, was just rather than just having an open garage, we provided a feature across the back of it.
Okay. Anything else?
I think that's it. Like I said, I just want to get some additional feedback because as one of the team members, it's got to go back and come back here with you all. And
I think
I want to make sure I'm coming back with something that's closer.
I think it was very helpful, very helpful. So I appreciate it. With that, I think you guys would be coming back another day, I assume, right? We're not going to vote on anything.
This would be the
tonight,
third,
right?
yes. Third ARB.
So we will table all the applications we have gone through
Bob.
today.
You should probably just ask if there's any public comment before we go that far.
Okay, is there any public comment?
It's a public hearing, so I wanted you to
online.
ask.
They're online too. I don't know if that's.
Is there anyone online?
Nobody online is asking.
So there's no one for public comments at this time, and so we will table the applications to a date uncertain when you come back to us. Is that right? Okay.
Yeah, if you'll make a motion to that effect. Yeah.
We'll make a motion to table the hearing.
So we'll
leave it
leave the
open.
public hearing open.
Is there a motion to?
I move to table.
Quick question. Do we
Yeah.
know the scorecard or would you get that in a follow-up report? I know I was doing a bunch of clip art.
I
while
could
he was
add it up
doing-
for you, but it's going to be below what the city had recommended. It wouldn't take me long, but I think it was more important to hear the comments.
But there'll be some follow-up. So we know like where we have to adjust, right?
I move to table.
Second?
Can you continue it to a date certain? Is that the following meeting?
Sure.
To a date uncertain.
Second.
Ayes?
Aye.
Ayes? So approved. Thank you very much. I know we're here for a while, but you
Just
got a
keep
lot
running it.
invested.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay.
The last item on the agenda was just a discussion session. There's nobody here from the public, so if you guys would like to, we can spend time on that, or we can continue that on.
Is this on marijuana?
Yes.
Is there a sample table?
I mean, this will be on the agenda as an official public hearing and there's nobody here to participate in a discussion for public comment. So I don't know that there's really a need to have the discussion session at this point.
And I think the changes are just going to put us in line with state law. So there's.
Pretty much that's what we would be going over. So we can go over those in more detail at the public hearing if you're comfortable with that.
Yes. Yes.
Sounds good.
Is that everything? Okay. Well, that was a short meeting.
Do we have a motion
I
to adjourn?
move to adjourn.
Second.
Ayes? So
Aye.
Aye.
adjourned. Thank you, everyone. You know, Anna, I found your notes now.